Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We obviously took a little break during tax reporting season for the UK, so I hope everything has gone smoothly for all of you who have joined us today. I have Alex Ranahan here, who is going to be our presenter for the day and telling us all about the exciting changes that we have created in CGIX for US tax reporting. Alex, over to you.
Thank you very much, Julia. And yes, echo that. Hope everyone's tax reporting season has gone as well as possible, and also that you've managed to enjoy a bit of the sunshine as well that we've been having. So yeah, today is going to be about US tax reporting and the developments that we've been making to CGIX over the past 6 to 9 months or so. We're going to be sort of talking through quite a bit of the sort of regulatory background, just as a quick refresher for those of you who already sort of get deep into this, and for those of you who aren't aware, it's just a sort of broad brushstroke view. And then I want to launch into straight into sort of the development that we've been doing. A lot of this is going to be show rather than tell, because I do think it's easier just to sort of show you straight away what it is we've been working on. And as always, if you do have any questions, please do just pop them in the question box or in the chat, and I will either do my best to address things as we go, or if I think I might be about to address that later on, I will delay until the particular part of the presentation covers it. So the agenda for this webinar, which is scheduled to last 45 minutes, but we'll try and get you out sooner. So yeah, quick look at the landscape, looking at some of the particular complexities with US tax, such as the qualified and ordinary securities and dividends and rules, which we've been putting into CGIX. And then we'll take you through a couple of the reports that we've been working on. So our gains and losses report and the income report. And we're going to explain to you as well why we're quite excited about how this has been going on. So to start off with, just a refresher on what the requirements are in US tax. So in the US, as so much as in the UK, there is a tax regime for capital gains tax, which covers gains and losses on disposals of assets. And for types of income that you have, such as interest, dividend, and property income, there is a form of income tax that applies to them. There are different rules depending on the different type of income, different rules that apply depending on the type of asset. But there are these rules all exist, and they when you have a tax reporting for the software, you do need it to account for all these different rules. And of course, we're pleased to say that CGIX has for a long time been able to cope with a lot of these rules, but we've been adding a few more bits in as we go. One of the key points with US tax reporting, which is possibly not as appreciated in the UK, is that there's an awful lot of very strict regulation around the form of a tax report. So in the UK, you may be aware that we send tax reports out to clients, to investment clients, which will detail gains and losses. It'll detail dividends and interest and all other forms of gain, loss, or income. But there isn't so much of a prescribed format in the UK, whereas in the US, there are particular forms that an organization has to complete, and they have to complete them in a certain way. They have to be submitted to the IRS and or the taxpayer themselves and or other recipients, as the case may be. In relation to a payment, for example, the organization making the payment must submit a report to the IRS in America. The IRS also receives reports on the individual reports. They receive an idea of the total amount that's been paid out as well. And all of this means that the IRS is able to reconcile all the different bits of data, or all the different figures that it's receiving on different on what's being paid, what's being received, what the client's putting on their tax return. And overall, it means that, again, sort of the idea of it is that it reduces non-compliance, whether that is through simple error or whether it is fraud. So this is the sort of reason why a lot of tax reporting in the US, it's much stricter. There is a lot more to look through and make sure that you're complying with regulation. And so when we began looking at this, the key was to make sure that we would make sure that the reports themselves and the data that you can sort of output from CGIX was compliant with regulation in the US, but at the same time, we want to make sure that the end client person receiving it can also simply easily read through it. So if I take you through, this is sort of the overview, and if nothing else, this is the main sort of takeaway slide that I want to show you. So what we've been working on is a set of reports that are suitable for use in conjunction with your 1099B, your 1099 div, and your 1099 int. So these are three types of tax report that must be submitted to the IRS. So these are regulatory. They are there's a standard format to 1099 forms, and what we've been doing in CGIX is producing reports which contain the data that you can use to complete these 1099 forms. At the same time, we want to make sure that the client themselves is able to sort of receive reports and that it's useful to them and that it's easily readable. So for a lot of it, we've made sure that we use fairly consistent formatting and layout to the UK reports that you're used to. It's just about making sure that it uses US terminology and has the appropriate US fields in the reports. Indeed, simple things like using US date format. It's obvious, but it is obviously something that you need to make sure it complies with what's expected, both on the part of the IRS and with the end client receiving it. And as I say, the output of these reports and the extracts that you can take out from CGIX, it is suitable for the 1099 forms. It's worth probably stressing here that with FSL, we do not have qualified intermediary status, and we don't have plans to gain it. So this is all about reports that you can use in conjunction with these forms, and making sure that the output that you take out of CGIX, the data that you take out, can be plonked straight into your form, that it's compliant with those reports. So that's the sort of overview of the regulation and the developments that we've been working on as I say, broad brushstroke. I'll take you through one particular example of some work that we've been doing in the background. So it's not just on the reporting side, it is also on the sort of general use of CGIX. So if I take you to, as an example, this is what the 1099 div form currently looks like. So this is for reporting dividends and distributions. And as you can see, it's sort of correct as at 2024, the January 2024. So what we'd been looking at was making sure that the concept of ordinary dividends and qualified dividends is captured within CGIX. This is obviously a specific US tax regulation. It's nothing to do with the UK. It's nothing to do with any other jurisdiction. The point is that it's US only. But since we want to make sure that this is all compliant and that you can fulfill your tax reporting obligations appropriately, we want to get in this sort of distinction in the security status. So if you go through to the 1099 div instructions, I'm not about to read through this, don't worry. I'm just showing you that the instructions do exist. They are on the IRS website. But there is a set of instructions that lays out what we mean by a qualified dividend and what we mean by an ordinary dividend. And one of the things that we wanted to do here was make sure that we captured these in CGIX. It's set out in brief. A qualified dividend has to be paid by a qualified corporation. That can be a domestic US corporation or a foreign qualified corporation. But one of the things that we wanted to make sure of was that you could capture within the security details of a particular asset, you could capture that status. And so one of the little things we've added here, if you cast your eyes to the bottom right of the security details screen, which hopefully is familiar to you, you can see that we have this US qualified status box. So this would just include an example security. So the standard, I should say default entry in this box is unknown. So those of you who are sort of looking at this and perhaps you're not so familiar with this particular terminology, or perhaps you're not sure if this is in your version of CGIX at the moment. No change. I want to stress that there is no change to your current sort of work functionality within CGIX in terms of it's not going to break every security now that we've added this box. It doesn't affect your UK tax reporting or indeed your Irish tax reporting, as the case may be. And in terms of any assets that you've already got within CGIX, whether they're system securities or whether they are securities you've added, this will automatically be classed as unknown. What we've been doing is making sure that we include that field now, and it can be filled out. I'll show you on the next slide just the drop down that we've got. But I did just want to stress very quickly at the outset that this doesn't break anything existing that you've already got. We've named that field US qualified status to reflect the fact that the field relates to US taxation only and is not relevant for other jurisdictions. So I think if we just put qualified status, there might have been quite a few queries coming through asking what that was about. So we wanted to make clear it is for US tax only. The default setting, as I say, is unknown, but it can be completed. I'll show you the drop down. We've also updated the import specification for the latest release of CGIX to include this box and the acceptable entries that you can put in it. But again, just to be absolutely clear on this, and particularly for those of you who who don't currently use CGIX for US tax reporting, it is not mandatory to complete this field when you're adding a new asset. So if you want to import a new asset or you want to add a new asset using this screen, there's no requirement for this field to be filled in. It's not going to stop you. What is going to happen if you don't fill that box in is that if you do then use CGIX for your US tax reporting, any dividends that are paid by that particular asset are not going to show in the sort of ordinary or the qualified dividends field until such time as you have updated that particular asset. I'll just very quickly show you what I mean. That is just the drop down that is. So we've given it the terminology we've used. So as I say, default is unknown. We've then said you can use either US qualified or US ordinary. We've then decided, again, to try and avoid confusion. If we'd used the word foreign qualified and foreign ordinary, there might have been potentially some confusion in the context of a screen that is most commonly used by UK users. So we wanted to make it clear it is either US or non-US. It's the same thing. It is just trying to make this the wording and the appearance as clear as possible for anyone who's using it. And again, as I say, it's not mandatory to complete this field when you're adding an asset, but it is mandatory to have that field completed if you're going to do your US tax reporting. So that's a lot of some of the background stuff that we've been working on, and a lot of the reason why we've been doing this US tax reporting development. Really, after this, I'm going to go straight into now what the reports look like. So this for the rest of this is really sort of taking you through what the new reports look like, our US tax reports. And let's start off with the gains and losses report that we've put together. And I would like to thank, by the way, Varsha in particular for a lot of the work that she did on this towards the end of last year. And of course, Mina, who some of you may know as an excellent and experienced tax expert on US tax as well. So a lot of this stuff has been sort of development over many months now, and we've been able to sort of seamlessly transition between teams and get things developed. So to start off with, this is the sort of layout for our 1099B sort of summary, the tax report that you can use in completing the 1099B form. So it's got that same sort of general layout that you're familiar with from your UK tax reports, but it is using US terminology. We've got the fact that it is in conjunction with the 1099B and the name of the 1099B report. It uses, it clearly shows, for example, that there is short-term and long-term gains. It sets out them separately, and it gives you a total as well for use when completing the tax return as well for the individual who receives it. And then again, as per requirements for completing the tax return or for the 1099B form, it sets out the gains and losses by country. And this is all, again, as I say, to try and make sure that the report is useful not just for regulatory purposes, but also for the individual who receives it. It's not just a sort of bit of black and white. There you go. Just try and decipher that. We want to make it as usable as possible for anyone, even a lay person. There's also, as you can see at the top, we've made sure that things like, for example, an error message does appear if needed, big bold red writing, so you can check across your system if anything is missing or anything is unreconciled. And I would also draw your attention to some of the work that has been going on across other teams within FSL. So we've got, for example, the company logo here. Obviously, we've used FSL, but you can use your own company logo. And we've got the headings themselves can also then have color branding applied to them as well. So here we're using FSL colors within the headings of the report, but you can use your own, and there are profile settings, report settings that you can use to complete that and make it look sort of to conform with your internal sort of branding policies. Just as either a reminder or telling you for the first time, whichever it might be, CGIX does compute capital gains and losses on US assets using the FIFO method. And here we've got an example of the detailed breakdown for gains and losses. And again, also just to draw your attention to the fact that we've got the columns here for short-term gain or loss and long-term gain or loss set out separately. And indeed where, for example, you've got a breakdown of a single disposal where there's separate parts to the separate acquisitions which form part of that disposal, it is set out separately, and it does include it in separate parts of the report, so you can clearly see how each disposal is set out. Again, trying to make it as usable as possible. We're using similar layout to how the UK tax reports work, where you can see the share identification rules clearly set out how disposals have been identified, and it is just to make sure that it reduces the number of queries you get back from clients as well if you have all this stuff clearly laid out for them. The other part of this, so that's the sort of gains and losses report. Let's go on to the income report, and I'll start off, as always, with our summary of income. This is, again, uses the layout of the 1099 int and the 1099 div regulatory reports to inform how exactly it's laid out. So these are all the different fields that come into the relevant tax reporting reports. Excuse me, I'm using the wrong words. I would also draw your attention again. So we've got the branding as said below. We also have, for example, disclaimers. So we had a little bit of fun testing some of the bespoke disclaimers that you can have on the report. But again, anything like that, we want to make sure it's customizable. It can be used to complete the tax report as appropriate. As with UK reports, the goal is to make the information easily understandable for the layperson while also complying with regulatory requirements. And in particular, I know from first-hand experience, when advising clients, that sometimes it is really important to use the same terminology, the same description for a particular tax return box as is given on the tax return itself. It just makes things easier for people when filling out their tax return, or indeed, of course, for you if you're filling out your 1099 div or int forms. So it's all about making these things easy as possible to understand while conforming with the regulatory requirements. You'll see as well, so we've got the different income types. It's summarized by US income and then by foreign income, and then finally the grand total. It sets out the amounts of US tax paid versus the foreign tax paid, and of course all figures are in US dollars, as you would expect. I'm going to take you through a few more of the pages on the income report, because I do think income, there's just more to show with income. There's two extra forms compared with the 1099B. So here we are. So this is to start off with interest from bank and cash accounts. It summarizes it out depending on the country, and then it also provides you with the detail for each bit. There is the option to include local currency amounts if you wish to include that. Of course, you don't have to, but if you do, then it does summarize them and total them for you there. We have tried to make sure the tables are, again, easy to follow, and they have roughly the same sort of layout, and make sure that each row on the report corresponds with a field on the 1099 int form. And again, we just take you through, for example, foreign bank and cash accounts. This is what the sort of detailed report looks like. We also, you might have noticed, the details for each country are set out in a separate table. I think this in particular follows some feedback we've had from clients, which relates to UK tax reports as well, where some of the information in relation to foreign income, because it can, if it's set out in more sort of separate tables, or it's just given sort of separate headings, it just makes it easier to follow. It makes it easier to flick through the tax report and see clearly what each bit relates to. So for the US, when we're developing these US reports, we took that to heart, and we made sure that we included these. For example, Hong Kong interest has been set out in the separate table to UK bank interest. It just makes it easier to follow. Then include a summary for interest from securities and debt. So again, this is a field on the 1099 int form. And again, we have, depending on the sort of different bits, so we've got US securities and debt, US savings, bonds and treasury obligations, box 3, and then the foreign securities set out by country. Followed by the detail as well, which I'm not going to show you because you don't need to see every single page in the report. It's just to give you the sort of flavor of what we've done. So we then have our dividends, and as I said before, this is all to do with ordinary and qualified dividends were one of the key things we wanted to make sure we captured. We have had the ordinary and qualified dividends set out. We've included the field within CGIX to capture it. We've also crucially wanted to make sure, because it is possible for, say, an asset that has qualified status to make a distribution that is not itself treated as a qualified dividend. We've made sure that we've also done some mapping. So one example of that, I think, is property income distributions from real estate investment trusts or other distributions. So we want to make sure that those are captured as ordinary rather than qualified. We then set out on the foreign pages, again, trying to make sure that it's clearly set out separately, so you can see each country. You can see that there's UK ordinary dividends and UK qualified dividends. Set them out, total them as applicable. It just makes it much easier to follow. I just want to make sure I've got my. Is that the? Oh, excuse me. I think there's been a slight problem with some of the slides. So that was a very quick run through of what the layout to the report looks like. We're very excited with how we've done. Obviously, there's still plenty more to do in terms of what the reports actually look like, but we did want to make sure that we've given you an idea of all this of the work that we've done so far. We already have customers who are sort of looking to take an upgrade as soon as possible, and if you would like to see a bit more of this, then we absolutely would strongly recommend that you get in touch. I'll take you very briefly onto next slide just to echo that. We are now, of course, ready for US tax reporting. So obviously we're aware that, for example, 1099 reports, the deadline for that is in March next year for 2025, and we are going to be ready for that. And if you would like to enjoy the benefits of CGIX's US tax reporting functionality, then I strongly recommend you contact your customer success manager. Alternatively, just contact Julia. But yeah, that was the sort of main thing I wanted to get across. The only other thing to mention on the functionality we've got are that, of course, we can export the data itself for easy review, so that it's not just using the reports and the individual report. You can see the data in bulk and get it ready. We also have. I thought I'd give you a quick sort of sneak peek at some of the next work that we're looking to do, the next phase of development for our US tax reporting. So we've been scoping out 1042 reports as well, because we know that withholding tax reports are critical. They're something that organizations have to do often, even if they don't have 1099 responsibilities. And also, we've been starting to look at some of the W8 reports as well. And again, we've been scoping that out. And I believe there is a requirement spec as well, which we've put together, which again is something we can have a share with people as needed. I think rattled through that in 25 minutes. That was much quicker than I expected. But I hope that's okay. But thank you very much for listening. And I'm going to take a sip of water while Julia.
Well, I read through some of the questions that we've had through. So, Alex, thank you very much for taking us through all the work that we've been doing over the last sort of 9 months or so. First question that we've had through is, are there any plans to have any other CGT cost methodologies, such as highest cost first?
So the current answer is no, not at this stage. What we're currently doing is we're happy to sort of discuss any further methods that you might want to use if that is something that you need. But at the moment, what we've gone with is sort of FIFO on disposals. That is the most commonly used across the industry. So we want to we're using that for now. But if there is a requirement to use alternative calculation methodologies, then of course please do get in touch. We're happy to discuss further.
Thank you. And then next one, would CGIX use average cost instead for disposition methods, example, mutual funds? I'll start with that.
Yeah, I think it's similar answer. We have gone for FIFO, but it's again, we're happy to sort of talk with you if that's a specific requirement for you. But for now, we have gone with FIFO across the board.
And then second part to that question, with computing cap gains, is one able to specify tax lots?
Not currently. We do long-term and short-term gains, but we'll happy to speak with you separately about that again. This is just to show you off the work we've done on. Yeah, we've got FIFO, we've got long-term and short-term gains, and obviously corporate actions can put through in the usual way.
Brilliant. If there are other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the questions tab. And while I give you guys a chance to have a think, Alex, if you can click through to the next couple of slides to do my usual roundup of what is coming up for the next couple of months. So webinars are going to be starting back up, obviously this being the first one ahead of the summer break. We've got another one coming up about income reporting in September to give you a run through of all the functionality available through CGIX for that. Obviously, budget is going to be at some point in October, so we will confirm the date as soon as we have visibility of when the budget's actually going to be delivered, and we'll give you a full rundown of changes that is likely to bring up that will impact CGIX and beyond. And then in November, we have another webinar session focusing on the functionality in CGIX to do with trusts and estates. And then as always, this is the time of year when I start to plug in our customer day for all of those of you who are customers on the call. 12th of November, starting at midday with a networking lunch and then going through our usual sessions. More information about the agenda to come in the next sort of few weeks or so. So we'll give you a full breakdown of what we will cover then. But in the meantime, you should all receive the link to register and to confirm your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you there. No further questions have come through on chat or on the questions tab. So if there's, well, first and foremost, thank you very much, Alex, for taking us through this. If there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out directly to us. We're happy to answer any further questions that you guys might have. Great to be back to our normal webinar routine with you all, and look forward to our next one in a month's time. Hope you have a good afternoon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.